The thud of the shoe on the hardwood floor was met with the satisfying crunch of exoskeleton. Izzy stopped to get her composure and cautiously peeled the shoe from the floor, hoping to find a very dead cockroach. And to her pleasure, the only thing under her shoe was a small mass of white organs and bits of exoskeleton. She grabbed the dead roach with the paper towel and tossed it in the trash without a second thought. All the roaches in the house had her on edge, but she continued working. They were just bugs. It was the antique feeling of the house that kept her going. It was old, 1800s kind of old. If you couldn't tell from the outside, the inside gave it all away. She began renovation a while back and it felt like trying to dust nature. But weeks had passed and slowly it started to look better. But one thing couldn't just be fixed. The roaches. They were everywhere. It was hard not to stumble on one of them or their trail. If they weren't crawling on the walls or in the pantry, the empty husk of a cockroach was usually laying around. A hollow reminder that she would never get rid of them, only learn to live with them. The roaches were what almost made her quit the house. She had a massive fear of roaches since she was a kid. Every night when she was young, she would hear roaches crawling in the walls, the slight patter of their feet on the drywall. She would run to her parents' room almost every night, crying, but they called it off as her active imagination. Well, one night, one of the roaches fell right on her face. Never again did she see roaches in the same way. She always tried to convince herself that they were just bugs, but she couldn't. She couldn't forget it. The frantic scurrying and the everlasting fear and knowledge that they were there to stay. The sun slowly melted away into the horizon, marking the end of another hard day of work. But it wasn't over yet. She needed money to buy paint and some more tools. Izzy put away her tools and hopped into her small car. The small dirt road led to the highway, only a couple of miles from her house. It was a really old house, so not much renovation had been done before she'd gotten there, so the roads weren't exactly in the best condition. She pulled onto the desolate highway, her only company a few semi-trailers. She enjoyed the car rides because they were her time to think, her time to unwind. During the day, she didn't have much time as she was always working. She pulled down the small sun shield. It was a bright sunset and she was driving straight into it. The sunset reminded her of her family back in Arizona. She loved them. She knew she did, but they had a mixed relationship. She'd been planning to move and find a house of her own. As soon as they heard that she was planning to move up north, they started ghosting her. She didn't know why. She did nothing wrong. She tried contacting them, calling them multiple times, but no answer. Eventually, she stopped trying. It wasn't worth all that work. If they were going to ignore her, that wasn't her problem. She flicked on the turn signal and pulled into the small bank. It was almost dark by now and she was tired. The bank was closed, but a small ATM sat outside. She turned the car off. The silence was kind of creepy, like a horror movie. She walked over, slipped her card into the machine and typed in her PIN. She selected $100 and stood quietly, waiting for the cash to dispense. The subtle whir of the machine droned in the quiet parking lot. Swoosh. 20s quickly fitted out of the machine. It was almost all 5 when the large roach ran out along with the bill. She shot back in repulsion, screaming as she flung the bills into the air. In all the ruckus and confusion, it flew away, disappearing into the dark. She calmed herself down and picked up the bills. She stared at the ATM and shuddered. How on earth did a roach get in there? It was now completely dark, with only the glow of the moon and the light of the bank walls to illuminate the parking lot, and she got back into her car, wanting desperately to go to sleep, to forget this whole mess. The next morning, she got back to work on the house, carefully scraping off old paint and reapplying new paint. This process continued far into the evening, and at the end of the day, she had yet to finish the painting, but she was close. In another day or so, the house would look as good as new, well, at least on the outside. It was late at night, and the glow of the moon slightly lit up her room. Izzy lay in her bed, staring at her phone. She was going through her contacts, but when she saw her parents, all the pain flooded back. She sighed and set her phone down. It had almost been 3 months since they spoke, and when they did, it wasn't a very pleasant conversation. They argued bitterly, tossing insults back and forth, threatening to never speak to each other ever again. She didn't really mean it, but she wasn't so sure if they did. She stared into the dark room. Tears began to form and rolled down her cheek. She wiped her eyes, turned off the lamp, and fell asleep to a soft whisper of the wind. Neon red numbers shone through the pitch black. 2:01. The moon still shone brightly outside the small window. Izzy was asleep, her quiet breathing the only noise in the room. As the clock turned 2:02, a small shape crept from a box on the floor. Its small body perked up, antenna flittering in the air as if smelling it, and crawled out onto the floor. Izzy rolled over and groped at a pillow, but to much dismay, felt a small creature frantically scurrying up her arm. She leapt up with almost superhuman speed and started screaming and flailing her arms wildly. She ran to the light switch and frantically flipped it on. Her heart was pounding. She could hear the pulse in her head. She looked around for the roach. She knew it was a roach. It had to be, but she didn't see anything. She flopped down on a chair, wishing that she would never see another roach again. That night, she decided to sleep on the couch, away from the roach in her room, and with the comfort of the TV, maybe she'd feel better. As she shuffled down the stairs, she noticed a bite mark on her arm. It was quite large, and unlike any bite mark she'd ever seen before. She poked it, which was followed by a howl of pain as it burned like fire. She grabbed some bandages and medicine from the bathroom and cleaned up the bite. It burned like hell, but at least it was clean now. She didn't want an infection, those were horrible. With the wound clean, she plopped on the couch, exhausted from the day's work and the cockroaches. Tomorrow, she decided, I'm going to hire an exterminator. With the dim flicker of the TV, she fell asleep once again. Izzy groggily sat up. She wiped her eyes and reached for her phone. After a few unsuccessful attempts, she got it. She groggily glanced at the caller, most likely a scammer. She looked and almost had a heart attack. It was Mum. Stunned, she just stared. After a couple of seconds, she snapped out of it and answered. "Hello?" Izzy responded with the taint of sleep in her voice. "Hey, honey, how's it going?" "Good. You called after all this time?" "Yes," she said slowly. "Your father still hasn't gotten over the whole scuffle, but I didn't want to hold a grudge. What's the point?" Yeah, you're right," Izzy said, her tone starting to sound happier. She stood up and cleaned up the couch, picking up all the pillows. They talked for a while, maybe an hour or two, but eventually Izzy had work to do. "Okay, Mum, thanks for checking in, love you." A small smile grew on her face and she set the phone down. Before she looked away, she noticed something moving on the phone. A pair of small antennae flicking back and forth. She knew exactly what that was. Horrified, she had had enough. She was going to kill this roach. She grabbed a small hammer sitting in the toolbox and slowly approached the phone. Once she was close enough, she reared back and started smashing. Pieces flew all around the room. The roach sprinted out of the broken phone as soon as it had the chance, and Izzy chased it. It ran towards the kitchen, moving as fast as its tiny legs could go. She grabbed a fly swatter and slowly stalked towards the roach. It was crawling on the wall, searching for a small crack or opening to get through. She reared back and swung on the wall. When she peeled the swatter away, it wasn't there. She peered closer and saw a small crack. It couldn't have, she thought, but she knew it had. That was the only place it could have gone. There was only one place that crack led to. It was the basement. Dread overtook her. What if she found a nest? She shivered at the thought. She searched for a can of bug spray. As if that'll do anything, she thought. But she tried bug spray many times before, but they just crawled away, as if she was spraying them with water. But it was worth a try. With a can of bug spray and the fly swatter, she made her way to the door. It stood looming over her, teasing her. She thought about turning back. She could just buy a new house. No, that was too expensive, and she'd already put too much money and effort to back down just because of a stupid bug. After finally mustering up the courage, she grabbed the door handle and began the descent into the abyss. The cold air pricked up against her skin. Small goosebumps rose, but she didn't know if it was because of the temperature or her fear. She flicked on the flashlight. A small beam shone in front of her. It provided comfort, but it wasn't very helpful. There were lights, but they weren't wired yet, so they were no help at all. With every step, she could feel her heart pounding harder and harder. At last, she got to the bottom. The floor was covered in dust and riddled with dead insects, wood chips and other debris. She shuffled along, listening to the crunch of exoskeletons under her feet and scanning the walls with her flashlight, hoping to catch the cockroach, or even find the nest. She crept along, nervously snapping in the direction of any subtle noise. As she neared the old washing machine, she saw it. It was on the wall, lying still. She popped the lid on the can and crept closer. It was close enough, and she lunged towards it, spraying wildly. She missed, however, only spraying the wall. She turned and watched it fly into the darkness of the other side. She muttered curses under her breath and made her way to the other side. This side was somehow darker and creepier than the other side. Boxes lined the walls and old cans of paint scattered the floor. The familiar noise of wings fluttering caught her attention. She listened in. Once she had an idea of where the thing was, she leapt forward. The cockroach was on the ground right next to what appeared to be the nest. All Lizzie could see was a lot of movement, but she couldn't see the shape. She pointed the flashlight towards the nest. It wasn't just a nest, however. It was a body. She dropped the flashlight and ran, screaming harder than she ever had. She rounded the stairs, but something was at the top. In the doorway, the figure of a man stood motionless. His face had roaches crawling all over it, and his eyes and mouth were filled with them. He didn't even seem to move on his own, but the roaches moved for him. His skin writhed with roaches like they were under his skin. Izzy screamed and went to turn the other way, but before she could get away, a hand covered her mouth. She tried to scream, but the cockroaches flooded her mouth. She could feel them crawling into her, deep in her lungs and down her throat. She stood and started to lose consciousness. Before it all went black, she saw the face of the man from the stairs. He was standing in front of her now. It was her father, or what appeared to be him. Stars began to twinkle in her eyes, and the last thing she ever saw was a roach-filled smile. Thank you for watching this video. If you want to support this channel, we have a link in the description for that. Don't forget to give a subscribe, a like, and press the bell to get notifications. Tell us your thoughts in the comments section. You can also send us your real or fictional horror stories.